Imagine this. You're sitting across from someone who has everything you thought you wanted: confidence, kindness, and depth, but the connection doesn't land. Why? The truth is, the secret to attracting quality men isn't about them at all. It's about the frequency you emit. Yes, the energy you carry and the stories you tell yourself shape who you attract. Now, before you roll your eyes and think, oh great, more self-love talk, let me ask you, if your mindset were a magnet, what's it pulling in right now? Is it frustration, loneliness, or hope disguised as fear? Don't worry, by the end of this, you'll know exactly how to turn that magnetic pull into something irresistible. But fair warning, this isn't about shortcuts or surface-level tricks. It's about unlocking the deeper power you've had all along. Imagine walking into a room and every eye turns to you, not because of the clothes you're wearing or the way you styled your hair, but because of something intangible. There's an energy, a presence about you that commands attention, not with loudness, but with authenticity. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever met someone who seemed to radiate a quiet magnetism? They weren't necessarily the most conventionally attractive, but something about them was undeniable. That's the power of aligned energy. And here's the truth. It's something you can cultivate starting right now. But before we dive in, let me warn you. This isn't about quick fixes or superficial charm. It's about transforming the very essence of how you show up in the world. Most people go through life completely unaware of the energy they project. They walk around carrying invisible weights, the fear of rejection, the pain of past heartbreaks, and the nagging belief that maybe they're just not enough. It's like wearing a suit of armor that no one can see but everyone can feel. The problem is, that energy doesn't just shield you, it also repels what you're trying to attract. Here's where things get tricky. You might think you're putting out positive vibes, but underneath, there's a layer of doubt, fear, or unworthiness that's doing all the talking. And the scary part? Others can sense it, even if they don't know why. So how do you break free from that cycle? It starts with becoming brutally honest with yourself. Let me ask you this. What thoughts are you entertaining about love and relationships? Are you telling yourself that all the good ones are taken, that quality men don't exist anymore, or worse, that you don't deserve someone amazing? Here's the wake-up call. Those beliefs are not just harmless thoughts. They're instructions you're giving to the universe about what to send your way. And no, I'm not saying this to scare you, okay? Maybe just a little. Because if you don't confront those inner narratives, they'll keep running the show. Now let's lighten the mood for a second. Imagine if your energy had a theme song playing in the background. Would it be a triumphant anthem or a sad violin? Be honest. It's funny when you think about it like that, isn't it? But humor aside, this isn't a joke. Your energy is like a signal, constantly broadcasting your inner state to the world. And the wild thing is, it's not about faking confidence or plastering on a smile. People can smell inauthenticity a mile away. Real alignment comes from doing the deep work of knowing yourself, valuing yourself, and showing up unapologetically as you. Here's where things get exciting. When you start aligning your energy, something incredible happens. You stop chasing. Instead, you start attracting. Quality men aren't looking for perfection. They're drawn to women who are comfortable in their own skin, who radiate a sense of purpose and self-assuredness. Picture this. A man walks into a room and sees you laughing, genuinely enjoying yourself, completely at ease. It's not the laughter that draws him in. It's the energy behind it, the confidence, the joy. And it's not just men. Opportunities, friendships, and connections start flowing toward you when your energy shifts. But don't take my word for it. Test it out. Start by catching yourself the next time you're about to spiral into self-doubt. Interrupt the pattern with a question. What if everything I desire is already on its way to me? And just when you think you've got it figured out, here's the curveball. Alignment isn't a one-time achievement. It's a daily practice. Life will throw challenges at you. Stress, disappointment, moments of insecurity. The key is to recognize when you're slipping into old patterns and recalibrate. Think of it like tuning a radio. If the signal gets fuzzy, you don't throw out the radio, you adjust the dial until you're back on the right frequency. But let's not sugarcoat things. This process can feel uncomfortable. Facing your fears, questioning your beliefs, and stepping out of your comfort zone isn't easy. There will be moments when you'll want to give up, when the old, familiar patterns will feel tempting. But here's the good news. Every time you choose to align your energy, you're rewriting your story. You're telling the universe, I am ready for more. And just when you think you've reached the end of the journey, another layer reveals itself. Because here's the thing about energy. It's dynamic. It evolves as you grow. And the more aligned you become, the more you'll attract not just what you want, but what you truly need. And isn't that the ultimate goal? To live in a state where your external reality reflects the depth, love, and alignment you've cultivated within. Now, let's take this a step further. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you truly decided what you deserved in a relationship? Not what you'd settle for, not what you think you can get, but what you know you're worth. If you hesitated even for a second, there's your answer. Most people stumble through relationships like they're walking into a restaurant without a menu, hoping the chef just knows what they want, and then they wonder why they're served something they didn't ask for. The truth is, if you don't set clear standards, you'll accept whatever comes your way. But here's the catch. It's not just about knowing what you want. It's about having the courage to hold out for it. Think back to the times you compromised, not because it felt right, but because you were afraid of losing someone or being alone. It's terrifying, isn't it? That fear of scarcity, the whisper in your mind saying, what if this is as good as it gets? That fear tricks you into lowering your standards, and the moment you do, you send a powerful message. Not just to others, but to yourself. You're telling yourself, this is all I deserve. And that's where the cycle begins. The longer you tolerate less than what you know you need, the harder it becomes to raise the bar. Now let's hit pause for a moment, because I know what you're thinking. But if I set my standards too high, won't I scare people away? Yes, you will. And that's the point. The right people aren't afraid of your standards. They rise to meet them. Think of it this way. If you're climbing a mountain, are you going to partner with someone who's content staying at base camp, or are you looking for someone who's willing to climb alongside you, even when the air gets thin? Standards aren't walls, they're filters. They don't block love, they refine it. But let's be real. Setting standards isn't just about creating a checklist. It's about knowing your non-negotiables and sticking to them even when it's uncomfortable. This is where most people falter. They meet someone who checks a few boxes and think close enough. But would you buy a car that runs half the time, or a house that only has 3 walls? Of course not. So why treat your relationships with less care than your possessions? It sounds absurd when you put it like that, doesn't it? Yet so many of us do it without realizing it. Here's where it gets interesting. Standards don't just attract quality people, they also reveal who you are. When you set and enforce boundaries, you're not just telling others what you expect, you're showing yourself what you believe you're worth. And let me tell you, that shift in energy is magnetic. People can sense when you value yourself, and it makes them value you even more. But here's the kicker. This only works if your actions align with your words. It's not enough to say you have standards, you have to live them. Think about it like this. Imagine you walk into a store and there's a beautiful sign that says premium quality only. But when you look around, you see products scattered everywhere, some broken, some dusty. Would you believe the sign? Probably not. Your standards are the sign and your actions are the store. If they don't match, no one's going to take you seriously. This isn't about perfection, it's about consistency. The way you carry yourself, the way you speak, the way you treat yourself, they all communicate your standards louder than words ever could. But let's not sugarcoat it. Enforcing your standards isn't always easy. There will be moments when you'll be tempted to compromise, to bend just a little for someone who seems almost right. And that's where the real test comes in. Will you choose temporary comfort or long-term fulfillment? Because make no mistake, the wrong relationships aren't just distractions, they're detours. They pull you away from your path and make it harder to find your way back. Now, before we move on, let me ask you something else. If you were interviewing someone for the most important role in your life, would you hire them just because they seemed nice? Or would you look for someone who not only meets the qualifications but also aligns with your vision and values? Relationships are no different. Setting clear standards isn't about being picky. It's about being purposeful. It's about choosing someone who complements your journey, not someone who complicates it. And just when you think you've figured out your standards, life has a way of throwing in curveballs. Maybe it's an unexpected connection that challenges your assumptions, or a moment of doubt that makes you question everything. That's the beauty and the challenge of this process. It's not static. Your standards will evolve as you do, and that's a good thing. Because the more you grow, the more you'll attract people who match that growth. But let's take a moment to reset, because this is heavy stuff, isn't it? It's easy to get overwhelmed by the idea of setting and sticking to standards. So let's lighten it up for a second. Have you ever been to a buffet where you piled your plate with everything that looked halfway decent, only to realize you didn't even want half of it? Relationships are a lot like that buffet. If you don't go in with a plan, you'll end up with a plate full of things that don't nourish you. It's funny when you think about it like that, but it's also a reminder to be intentional. And just when you think you've nailed down the concept of setting clear standards, there's another layer to uncover. Imagine standing in front of a door that leads to everything you've ever wanted, a life filled with love, connection, and fulfillment. Now imagine reaching for the handle only to find it locked, and no matter how hard you push, it won't budge. What if I told you the key isn't lost? It's buried inside you, hidden beneath layers of old wounds, fears, and doubts. Emotional blocks are those invisible barriers that keep us from opening the doors we're meant to walk through. But here's the truth. They're not there to punish you, they're there to teach you something. The question is, are you ready to uncover what's been holding you back? Let's get honest for a second. How many times have you caught yourself saying, why does this keep happening to me? Whether it's repeating the same arguments, attracting the same toxic patterns, or feeling stuck in relationships that go nowhere. It's like being caught in an endless loop, isn't it? And here's the uncomfortable reality. Those patterns aren't coincidences. They're reflections of unhealed wounds, of stories you've told yourself so many times that they've become part of your identity. But don't let that scare you. Let it excite you. Because if you're the one creating the loop, you also have the power to break it. Now let me ask you this. When was the last time you really sat with your emotions? Not just the surface ones like frustration or anger, but the ones buried deeper, like fear, shame, or grief. Most of us spend our lives running from those feelings, distracting ourselves with work, relationships, or even binge-watching shows we don't care about. It's almost funny when you think about it, how much effort we put into avoiding what's already inside us. But here's the thing, what you resist persists. Those emotions don't disappear, they linger, shaping your thoughts, actions, and the energy you bring into every relationship. Picture this, you're carrying a heavy backpack filled with rocks you didn't even know were there. Every argument, every heartbreak, every time someone let you down, another rock got added. And now you're trying to climb a mountain with that weight on your back. Doesn't it make sense to stop and unpack it? But here's the catch. Unpacking isn't easy. It requires courage, the kind of courage most people avoid because it feels safer to keep climbing, even if it's exhausting. But you're not here for safe, are you? You're here for freedom, for transformation, for something bigger than the life you've been settling for. Let's reset for a moment though, because I know this is heavy. Imagine if you could swap out that heavy backpack for a carry-on. Doesn't that sound like a dream? But here's the funny part. Most of us would still argue about which rocks to keep. Well, this one reminds me of that time I was right, or I can't let go of this one, it's part of who I am. It's absurd, isn't it? But it's also exactly what we do when we cling to old stories and wounds, even when they're holding us back. The first step to healing emotional blocks is awareness. You can't change what you don't acknowledge. Start by asking yourself, what's the story I've been telling myself about love, trust, and connection? Is it that love always ends in pain, that no one can be trusted, or maybe that you're not enough? These stories aren't truths. They're perspectives shaped by past experiences. And while they may have protected you once, they're no longer serving you. Recognizing that is the first crack in the wall you've built around your heart. Once you've identified those stories, the next step is challenging them. Here's where most people get stuck because challenging your beliefs feels like stepping into the unknown. It's terrifying, isn't it? Letting go of what you've always believed means embracing uncertainty, and that's where fear tries to pull you back. But here's the thing, every time you challenge a limiting belief, you're rewriting the narrative of your life. And doesn't that sound far more exciting than staying trapped in the same old script? Now here's the part that no one likes to talk about. Healing isn't linear. It's messy, uncomfortable, and sometimes downright frustrating. You'll take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and that's okay. The key is to keep moving, to keep peeling back the layers even when it feels like you've hit a wall, because just when you think you can't go any deeper, you'll uncover another layer, another piece of the puzzle that brings you closer to freedom. And isn't that what we're all chasing in the end? The freedom to live, love, and connect without the chains of the past weighing us down? Let's pause for a moment and breathe, because this is a lot to take in. And while we're here, let me ask you something. If your emotions were a guest at a party, how would they behave? Would they be the life of the party, stealing the spotlight? Or would they be that awkward guest hiding in the corner, waiting for someone to notice them? It's a funny way to think about it, but it's also a reminder that your emotions, no matter how messy or uncomfortable, are just trying to be acknowledged. And the sooner you let them speak, the sooner they stop yelling for attention. Healing emotional blocks isn't about erasing the past, it's about integrating it. It's about looking at the wounds and saying, I see you, I hear you, and I'm ready to let you go. But here's the twist. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means taking the lessons and leaving the pain. It means stepping into a new chapter, not defined by what's behind you, but inspired by what's ahead. And as you take that first step, something incredible happens. Picture this, you're standing at the base of a mountain, gazing up at the peak, knowing it holds everything you've ever dreamed of, a life of purpose, fulfillment, and connection. But instead of climbing, you're frozen, staring at the ground, overwhelmed by the enormity of the journey ahead. Here's the question most people avoid asking themselves. Are you stuck because the mountain is too high, or because you're afraid to take the first step? Growth isn't about conquering the summit in one leap. It's about committing to the climb, one deliberate step at a time. Let's face it, staying the same feels safe. The routines, the habits, the familiar patterns, even the ones that no longer serve you, they're comfortable, aren't they? But comfort zones are like golden cages. They give you the illusion of security while quietly robbing you of the life you're capable of living. And here's the scary truth. Every moment you spend clinging to comfort, you're falling further behind, not just in achieving your goals, but in becoming the person you're meant to be. That sense of urgency you feel, it's your potential, knocking, begging you to wake up and realize there's more waiting for you, if only you'll reach for it. Now let me ask you something. When was the last time you did something that scared you? And I'm not talking about watching a horror movie or trying a questionable food combo. I mean something that pushed you, that forced you to grow, that made you question everything you thought you knew about yourself. If you're struggling to remember, that's a sign. Growth begins the moment you step into discomfort, the moment you look fear in the eye and say, "You don't scare me enough to stop me." But here's the twist. Growth isn't just about big dramatic leaps. It's in the small, consistent actions, the daily choices that seem insignificant in the moment but compound into monumental change. Imagine planting a seed. You water it, give it sunlight, and nurture it every day. At first, nothing seems to happen, and you might even wonder if it's worth the effort. But one day, almost without warning, it sprouts. Growth works the same way. You may not see immediate results, but every effort, every step forward is laying the foundation for a future you can't yet see. Let's pause for a second, though, because I know what you're thinking. What if I fail? It's a valid question, one we all ask ourselves. But let me flip it. What if you succeed? What if the risk you're so afraid to take is the very thing that transforms your life? And even if you stumble, what's the worst that can happen? You learn, you adapt, and you try again. Failure isn't the opposite of growth, it's part of it. In fact, some of the greatest breakthroughs come after the hardest falls. Think about it. When you trip, your instinct isn't to stay on the ground, is it? You get up, dust yourself off, and move forward. Growth demands the same resilience. Here's where things get interesting. Growth doesn't just change you, it changes the world around you. When you focus on becoming the best version of yourself, you start to attract opportunities, relationships, and experiences that align with your higher self. It's like tuning into a new frequency. The things that once seemed out of reach suddenly feel attainable, even inevitable. But this shift doesn't happen by accident. It requires intention, discipline, and a willingness to let go of what no longer serves you. And that, my friend, is where most people falter. Let's reset for a moment with a question. Have you ever tried holding on to something and reaching for something new at the same time? It's impossible, isn't it? Yet that's exactly what we do when we cling to old habits, mindsets, and fears while trying to grow. It's like trying to climb a ladder with a weight tied to your ankle. The first step to growth is release. Release the doubts that tell you you're not enough. Release the fear of what others might think. Release the belief that growth is for someone else. Someone more talented, more confident, more deserving. Because here's the truth. Growth is for anyone willing to pursue it, but it's not for the faint of heart. And just when you think you're starting to get the hang of it, growth throws you a curveball. You'll hit plateaus, moments where it feels like you're spinning your wheels, getting nowhere. These moments aren't signs to quit, they're opportunities to dig deeper. Plateaus are where the real work begins, where you're forced to confront not just the challenges outside of you, but the ones within. And if you can push through, if you can stay committed, you'll find that the view from the other side is worth every struggle, every sacrifice, every doubt you had to overcome. Let's bring this back to something practical, because all this talk about growth can feel abstract. Think of one area of your life where you know you've been playing small. Maybe it's your career, your relationships, or even your health. Now, ask yourself, what's one thing you can do today, just one thing, that would move you closer to where you want to be? It doesn't have to be big. Maybe it's a phone call you've been avoiding, a book you've been meaning to read, or even just taking a moment to reflect on what you truly want. The point is to start, to take action, no matter how small, because every step forward is a step away from the person you used to be. And just when you think you've found your rhythm, growth will challenge you again. Growth is not a destination, it's a continuous journey, an ever-evolving process of becoming. It's about peeling back the layers of who you thought you were to discover the limitless potential of who you truly are. Along the way, you'll face challenges that test your resolve, doubts that threaten to derail your progress, and moments of discomfort that tempt you to retreat to the familiar. But every step forward, no matter how small, is a victory. Every lesson learned, no matter how difficult, is a stepping stone to a stronger, wiser, more resilient version of yourself. The path of growth requires courage, The courage to face your fears, confront your limits, and let go of the stories and patterns that no longer serve you. It's about embracing the unknown with a sense of curiosity and excitement rather than fear. Growth demands action, not perfection, and a willingness to make mistakes, knowing that each one brings you closer to understanding, closer to mastery, closer to your higher self. Ultimately, growth transforms not only you, but the world you create around you. As you elevate your energy, refine your focus, and align your actions with your intentions, you'll find that the things you once thought were out of reach begin to flow naturally into your life. Growth doesn't just change what you achieve, it changes who you are at your core. And the more you grow, the more you inspire others to do the same, creating ripples of transformation that extend far beyond yourself. This journey is yours to take, and the time to begin is now.